All right, today we're diving into something that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, but it's very real. We're talking about transgenic animals, creatures whose DNA has been, well, rewritten by us. It's a wild topic full of amazing potential and some pretty big questions, so let's just jump right in.
Okay, let me ask you something. Could an animal be a living medicine factory? I mean, just picture a cow or a goat and its milk contains life-saving drugs. A walking, breathing pharmacy. It sounds totally out there, right? But what if I told you it's not science fiction? It's happening right now.
Or what about this one? A fish that actually glows in the dark to warn us if our water is polluted. I mean, how cool is that? You see, this is way bigger than just making animals grow faster or something. We're talking about completely rewriting the rules of biology to tackle some really huge problems.
Okay, so what does transgenic even mean? Let's get down to basics. A transgenic animal is, simply put, an animal that has a foreign gene, like a little piece of DNA from a totally different species, intentionally inserted into its own genetic blueprint. And that one tiny change, well, it can lead to some absolutely massive results.
And this isn't some brand new idea. Scientists have been working on this stuff for decades. It really kicked off with that famous giant mouse back in 1982. That was the proof of concept. Then you had Astrid the pig, which got people thinking, hey, maybe we could use this for organ transplants. And now it's stuff you can actually buy. You've got glowfish, which are basically just cool glowing pets, and then the Aqua Advantage salmon, which is the first genetically modified animal approved for us to eat.
So, let's dig into how this all works from the lab bench out into the real world. And the journey really begins with something incredibly important, using these animals to help us decode and fight human disease. I mean, think about it. When you're studying something like Alzheimer's, you can't just go experimenting on people's brains, right? It's just not possible. So scientists desperately need a stand-in, a living model where they can watch how a disease works and, more importantly, test out new drugs. And that's exactly where transgenic animals become absolutely crucial.
And this really shows you what's at stake. On one side, you've got a healthy, happy neuron firing away. On the other, a neuron just devastated by Alzheimer's. The big problem here are those things called senile plaques. They're these sticky, gunky protein buildups that basically clog up the brain's entire wiring system. And that's what leads to that devastating loss of memory we all know about.
So the big question is, how on earth do you make a mouse get a human disease like Alzheimer's? Well, it's an incredible piece of science. Step 1, you find the mutated human gene that causes those awful plaques. Then you basically create this little genetic package, a mini gene, and you attach it to a genetic switch that only flips on in the brain. You insert that whole thing into a mouse embryo, and voila, you get a mouse that actually develops the same plaques and the same memory issues as a human patient. It gives researchers a living, breathing model to test new ideas on. And this isn't a one-trick pony, not at all. This exact same approach, creating animal models, is totally essential for researching all sorts of other major diseases. Huntington's, cancer, heart disease, you name it.
Okay, so we've talked about understanding diseases, but what about actually treating them? That's the next big step. And this is where things get really interesting, because farm animals are now showing up in a way you would never, ever expect.
Get ready for a new word, farming. That's pharma like pharmaceuticals plus farming. And it's exactly what it sounds like. The big idea is to turn animals into living bioreactors. You use their natural ability to produce tons of milk to make really complex medicines, proteins and stuff that are super hard or even impossible to create in a traditional lab. And just think about the sheer scale here for a second. 10,000 liters. That's how much milk one single dairy cow can pump out in a year. Now, what if you could engineer that cow so that every liter of that milk contained just 1 gram of a life-saving drug? You'd be producing that drug on an industrial scale. It's just mind-boggling.
And this isn't just a theory. Look at this quote. It's about a drug called antithrombin, which helps prevent blood clots. For people who don't make it enough of it naturally, it's a huge deal. Getting it from human blood donations is tough and expensive. But get this, just 75 of these special transgenic goats could make enough of this drug to supply the entire world. I mean, that's a total game changer, right? We're talking about shifting from giant factories to, well, a field of goats.
Here's another great example. Making antibodies for therapies is a huge challenge. See, if you just use mouse antibodies in a person, our bodies freak out and attack them. So what's the solution? Enter the XenoMouse. It's genius.
Scientists went in, turned off the mouse genes for making mouse antibodies, and swapped in the human genes instead. So now, this little mouse produces fully human antibodies. It's a massive breakthrough for creating new treatments for diseases like cancer.
All right, so we've seen the lab and the pharmacy, but this tech isn't staying cooped up. It's starting to move out into the real world, and it has the power to change, well, just about everything, from what's on our dinner plate to the health of the entire planet.
Okay, let's talk about pigs and pollution. There's this big environmental problem, pig waste. See, pigs eat a lot of grain and soy, but they can't digest a certain type of phosphorus in it. So that phosphorus goes right through them and ends up in their manure. And when that manure gets into our waterways, all that extra phosphorus causes these huge, nasty algal blooms that can wreck entire ecosystems. So what's the fix? It's something called the Enviropig, and the science behind it is just so clever. Researchers took a gene from a common bacteria, E. coli. This gene makes an enzyme that's really good at breaking down that problem phosphorus. Then they put that gene into the pig, so that the pig produces the enzyme right in its own saliva. So what happens? As the pig chews its food, its own saliva, now full of this special enzyme, mixes in and breaks down the phosphorus before it's even swallowed. The result? Way less phosphorus in the manure, less water pollution. It's an amazing self-contained solution to a really big problem.
Now let's switch over to fish, because they really show you the two extreme ends of this technology. In one corner, you've got the Aqua Advantage salmon. Super practical, it's got a gene that helps it grow to market size like twice as fast, all about efficient food production. And in the other corner, the glowfish. It has a gene from a sea anemone that makes it glow in the dark. It has no practical purpose at all, it's just a really cool-looking pet. From food to fun, all with the same basic tech.
But it gets even cooler. We can actually use these fish as living, swimming pollution detectors. Scientists have created these fish where a gene that makes them glow green is hooked up to a trigger that only activates when certain pollutants are in the water. So you just put these fish in a river, and if they start glowing, boom, you've got an instant living alarm system telling you the water's contaminated.
Okay, so we've seen them as disease models in the lab, we've seen them as medicine factories on the farm, and even as environmental heroes. It's been quite a journey. So the big question, of course, is what's next? Where do we go from here?
Well, the stuff on the horizon is even more mind-blowing. We're talking about things like Xenotransplantation. That's using organs from pigs, engineered so our bodies won't reject them, for human transplants. Or how about cattle that are just immune to mad cow disease from birth? Or milk that's naturally lactose-free? Even bacon that comes packed with its own healthy omega-3s. The possibilities are just incredible.
So, when you step back and look at the whole picture, it's clear this technology is changing our relationship with the entire animal kingdom in a fundamental way. You know, the science itself isn't really the biggest challenge anymore. The real question is for us. As we get this godlike power to literally rewrite the code of life, how are we going to choose to use it? What kind of future are we going to shape for the animal kingdom and for ourselves?